Hey campaigners, I wanted to conclude this session on the panoramic view of presidential campaigning gaffes by talking about media coverage of gaffes and specifically both sides of the debate over whether media should cover gaffes in general, whether they should be obsessed with the coverage of gaffes and let gaffe coverage dominate news coverage, and then finally, what are the consequences for American democracy and American campaigns and how citizens understand campaigns if gaffe coverage dominates political coverage. And so on the plus side, I think there's a few arguments to be made in favor of both media coverage of gaffes, but also excessive, potentially, media coverage of gaffes. And that first one is that the more that campaigns are scripted, the more that they're run as theatrical performances and campaigners are supposed to hit their notes and never supposed to deviate from their notes and never actually engage the public in a kind of unpredictable question and answer session that could potentially create a harmful image event for the otherwise scripted candidacy. I think that there's an argument to be made that that is an attempt to subvert the democratic process. Ideally, the democratic process is a campaigner makes a series of claims, and then both the public and media are allowed to check those claims. When campaigners are making vague claims or appeals to values, it becomes difficult for media and the public to check those claims, to kind of figure out whether your governing philosophy would work, to figure out whether your plan to privatize Social Security would actually work. And so there is a kind of element of the democratic give and take, the democratic deliberation that is absent from a scripted campaign. And when a politician goes off script, when they mess up the script, when the gaffe screws the script up, it is media then holding their feet to the fire through degradation rituals. And so in a sense, that degradation ritual, you can argue, is essential for the preservation of democracy, of democratic exchange, of holding our leaders, our betters, our people who have higher status than us, their feet to the fire. The second one is that I think there's an argument to be made that there's something revealing in gaffes, whether it's revealing about the character of the person who's running or revealing about their potential leadership abilities if they were in office, that you can argue is true about these gaffes. And so some media members argue that we need to cover gaffes because it is an evidence of the way that A, a leader might err in the most powerful office in the land, and B, how they recover from those errors, how they talk about those errors with their staff and also with the American public. And so to give a specific example, Nixon was incredibly shifty-eyed in the 1960 debate over Kennedy. Was there perhaps something suggesting, something revealing about his shifty-eyedness, given that what we now know about his duplicity especially in 1972 in the Watergate hearings? On the other side, there is an argument to be made that media shouldn't be concerned at all with gaffes, especially not to the level that they are. There's kind of a who cares element to some of these gaffes. For instance, when Jimmy Carter was allegedly afraid of being attacked by what he thought was a killer swamp rabbit, what do we really know that happened there? Is that true evidence of his essential weakness and his inability to perform the office that he had already been doing at that point for 4 years? I don't know. Is Michael Dukakis's poor answer to the question about whether he would support the death penalty if his wife, Kitty Dukakis, was raped and murdered? He kind of gave this robotic answer. Perhaps he froze for 15 seconds. He didn't give the best answer that he could. Is that really revealing about how he would perform in the Oval Office? So there's kind of a who cares element. And then there's also even worse arguments. Number one is that obsessive focus on campaigns deters the public from getting involved in political campaigns because it presents these campaigners as bumbling idiots, these buffoons who are constantly, quote, gaffe prone, mistake prone, that these people are going to be assuming the highest office in the land. And many Americans are dismayed by politics already. They think it's a bunch of jargon. They think that people are a bunch of self-interested sycophants who are kind of enriching themselves from the public coffers, that they'll lie and cheat and steal, do anything they can to get elected, that there's really no difference between the major parties. Well, this is just one more straw on that camel's back if we continue to present them through the news media as bumbling idiots and not, in many cases, the smart and hardworking people that they are. And then finally, I would say that there is kind of an easy way to talk about dismissing gaffe coverage as undemocratic, and that is that it focuses on superficial, it focuses on the gossipy, perhaps that's why it's one of my favorite topics in the course. It focuses on distractions from the issue at hand. It focuses on potential flaws of character that may not have anything to do with how that person executes in the highest office of the land. So there's two sides to this coin: to cover gaffes excessively or to not to cover them at all, and somewhere in between. I've written this as your prompt as well for this week, and I look forward to reading how you hash this out on a discussion board. Until then.